Okay. Thank you everyone for coming and for staying. I know it's a later screening, but I hope you enjoyed it. It was a great film. And thank you guys for being here and responding some questions for us. If you could start by just introducing yourselves and give us a little bit of your background, and then we can go ahead and talk about the film.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Flores. I play Josie in the film. I am a USC alum, fight on. I'm an MFA at acting here, graduated 2015. So it's really nice to be back to campus and be around everyone. Professional dancer for many, many years. That was kind of my life. And then transitioned to acting many years ago as well. And I got to do this wonderful intermingling of both of those worlds. So thanks for having us.
I'm Anthony Nardolillo. I'm writer, director, and producer. And thank you for watching our film.
I'm Jorge Burgos, and I play Ralphie in the movie. I was born in Puerto Rico, raised in Orlando, Florida, and I am a professional dancer. I live, and my career is traveling the world, teaching, performing, and this was actually my first film, my first anything acting, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it.
Anthony, you didn't talk about your background.
I'm Puerto Rican and Italian. I'm from New York. I studied finance and accounting. I didn't go to film school. I was a dancer years ago. I love music. Very passionate about my culture. And I've been directing the last 10 years, a lot of music videos and commercials. And really, I guess that's about it.
Hi, my name's Sandra Varona. I was the producer, line producer, and production manager of the film. And as far as my background, I went to the Art Institute for video production and also LACC for film. And I started producing music videos, then transitioned into short films, and then I PM a few feature films. But this was my first feature as a producer, line producer.
Thank you guys. I guess one of the first questions I would like to go into is the lack of Latin music films out there. Like there's a lot of dancing films, and I'm not talking about musicals, I'm talking about, the music world and
like
choreography. Yeah, So how, I'm guessing that was a big motivation into making this film. I want to hear a little bit about that. Obviously you guys have background, a dancing background, and I want to know what the main inspiration was to get here. And also talking a little bit about funding. I heard it was entirely funding by a campaign.
Well, it was started by
a campaign? Yeah, so if you guys could touch on those subjects. Yeah.
So the good questions. The inspiration was, I was on the set of Stomp the Yard. I don't know if anyone remembers that movie in 2007. I was visiting a friend at the time, Columbus, who starred in the movie. And that was the first set that I had been on, and at that moment, being passionate about Latin music and dance, and having just gone to LA to pursue acting, I knew that I wanted to create something like Stomp the Yard, and having seen Step Up, I said, why don't we have something like this for Latin music and dance? And that was the genesis of this project back in 2007. And so the idea was, but immediately, I know it ends in some kind of a dance finale, but I was very adamant that I did not want the plot to be about winning a dance contest or having to raise money to win something. I wanted to keep the ending a little original and abstract. But certainly there were influences by more traditional dance films, and also Stomp the Yard was an influence in terms of shooting style. I think it lingered more on the outer boundary in terms of the way it was shot and the storytelling and the acting, and I wanted to kind of go more that route, give it a little more raw element, and then definitely layer it with music. Every song in that movie was intentionally chosen, and didn't want to be, story and then just arbitrary dance and then back to story. I wanted it all to kind of be cohesive so that whatever you're listening to and whatever you're seeing was whatever those characters were feeling at the time, and it was helping carry the emotion and narrative forward. Do you want us to elaborate more on the dance before moving on the funding?
Sure, yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll let, because they'll be able to show on the dance.
What exactly did you want to know in terms of the dance?
What why did you choose to do this project? Other than being passionate about dance, what pushed you to be like this? Because it's a smaller film, but what was like the key factor for you?
So I've been a part of the project in some form since he made the short film over 10 years ago. I was training one of the lead dancers and actors, Lee Thompson Young, also an alum from USC. And when I worked on that project, I got to know Tony and his passion, and it was clear that no matter what, he was going to make this movie made. He was going to get this movie made. So as the years progressed, he sent me version of the script. I thought, okay, nice, cool. Oh, good ideas, great. This version, I was like, this is the one. All the layers of gentrification, all like the dynamics of the relationships, and oddly enough, I think it's fair to say, there was another actress that was going to play it. I was in grad school, and he called me up one day and was like, what would it take for you to leave grad school? And I was like, Steven Spielberg. and so he was like, all right, bye. And he continued to work in the project, and things delayed it. Ultimately, the actress dropped the actress, long story short. He said, what are you doing for the next month? And I had a plane ticket booked to land the day before the table read and to return 2 days after wrapping. That I was just going back to New York to get, out of LA for a while. I've been here for a few years. And he's like, what do you want to do what are you doing during these dates? And I was like, I think I'm supposed to do a film. Because it was just too crazy and too much of a coincidence. And so after reading the script, I was like, yeah, this is totally supposed to happen. A lot of divine inspiration came throughout the entire project.
Well, I was the last kind of entity added to the film when it came to the cast. I am a professional dancer, as I mentioned, but I specialize in bachata. Myself and my partner are the top, most famous bachata couple in the world. If you look us up, Ataca y La Alemana, that is us. And I've been doing that now for 8 years. I did start with salsa, and then I transitioned to bachata because there was just a product that me and my partner had that carried us to be able to travel around the world. And ironically, I was at a dance event, a bachata event, and I was there doing the Kickstarter. I was emceeing an after party. It was a birthday party for one of my business partners. And he walked in and he saw me on the mic. He liked my charisma. He knew I was Puerto Rican. He knew that I could dance salsa, but I was a bachatero. So Tony just asked me, he was like, would you be okay in auditioning for a film in being a Puerto Rican male and a salsa dancer? And to me, salsa has always been my passion, since the beginning. So to go back to your question, the inspiration in being able to be a Puerto Rican male in such a strong film and such a strong idea, that motivated me. And then obviously to kind of showcase my salsa talents, because everyone looks at me as a bachatero and they don't know that I could jam in some salsa. So I think that was all I needed to know. I auditioned and I was very fortunate to get the part. So that was really truly what was the inspiration behind being able to take on this film. So thank you for the opportunity, Tony. Sandra?
Can I?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for the other mic. I guess to elaborate. Never mind. I'll just speak loud. For financing wise, I think I already asked the question, but it would be really helpful as well for a lot of students here that just wonder that how do you get a movie, a passion project, how do you get that on the road, how do you get that started? So that's kind of like what I want to touch on, like the funding and everything.
I'll start and then I'll let Sandra also get involved. But I want to preface to Sandra. Sandra was at my short film and knew she always wanted to work with me. At the time when we started pre-production, Sandra was not on the project. She was at Maker Studios, which is owned by Disney. But I wanted her to work on the project. The line producer that we had at the time in New York took the little money that we had and disappeared. And so I got to New York and there wasn't 1% of prep done. And this is out of the Kickstarter money, which I'll get back to the Kickstarter. I called Sandra. I said, Sandra, I don't know what to do. We've got to move forward. Is there anything you can do? She had quit her job and was on a plane that night. She talked to her parents, can you watch the kids? And in the morning when she arrived, she had an email from Maker Studios, the exec, saying, listen, we respect your decision, you'll have a job when you get back. And that's when, back to Kimberly, like the whole divine intervention, you kind of know you're on the right path. So, love Sandra for that. So, back to the Kickstarter, I had been trying to raise money for this film, and this is a lesson for filmmakers. I've been trying to raise money for this film since the end of 2007, when we had exploded with a very successful short film. And we had 700 people, The Egyptian, had Giancarlo Esposito, Laz Alonso, the late Lee Thompson Young. We had won awards. And there were execs there, and I'm like, all right, this is going to get going. We're going to make this movie like in the fall of next year. And the journey started, the ups and downs of meeting production companies and being promised this and flying to meet investors that were going to take you. You learn over the years all the hot air, right? People really wanting to just like hang out and look cool and say they have money, and and it's a learning curve. And so I chased money everywhere, to the point where the closest where I was at funding was in 2009. It fell through, and my cousin calls me and goes, I'm smoking cigars with all these royals in Saudi Arabia, you got to come out. So they sponsored my visa. You can't just get on a plane and go to Saudi. You have to be sponsored. So he sponsored my visa, and I went there. And he had $3.5 million secured. And then the guy's aunt died, and he went to Turkey, and he just did not come back. And I'm just like, again. But I had met so many people. I said, there's a lot of money here. There's a lot of leads. So I called my buddy. I said, look, I'm going to stay in Saudi. I'm canceling my lease. Can you put my stuff in public storage? And I stayed for about a year. And I started trading my financing skills. I was doing prospectuses and business plans for an investment banker out there that was giving me a stipend a month and introducing me. And I did. I left there a year later with a $3.5 million in escrow, partnered with Randall Emmett, a very successful producer that did Lone Survivor. Got back. We were talking pre-production, and then that deal fell apart. And it's like, this is like 7 years, running 100 miles an hour, being that close. I mean, we were spending money already, and he was on the phone with CA. We're going to get Antonio Banderas to play the dad. And, it was like your typical like Hollywood talk, and we're going to, and I'm like, cool, this is awesome, let's go. And that fell through, and then that's really when I hit a real low. I had gotten married, and I had just regrouped. It was like, all right, you know what? Now I got to go back into finance. I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to start saving my money, and I'm going to go another route. So a few years had passed, and that's when I started honing on my skills as a director, continuing to pursue investors and seeing and really getting into understanding how I could get the budget down to under $1 million. So at that time, it was $1 million budget. And that got us towards the 2014, when I had gotten a commitment from an investor for $150,000. We started casting, and that's when I met Gilbert Saldivar. I had auditioned Gilbert and Casper at the time. Casper was J-Lo's boyfriend at the time, and thankfully with all that, that's how I met Gilbert. It was the fall of 2014. We were getting to go, ready to go again, and it got to that point where the money was there, but it wasn't in my account yet, and we were getting closer. I was starting to have to write checks, and I get a call from the investor that was giving the money. The producer said, how's it going? I'm $150,000 out. And I said, well, what do you mean you're $150,000 out? I haven't seen anything. And that producer had spent everything. So that fell through, and the little money that I had $20,000 in my account. I was driving to Vegas because I was consulting also in pharmaceuticals and finance. And I remember I was on the way back, and my girlfriend was with me, who I've now been with for about 4 years. And I get a notice from the bank that my account was overdrafted. The girl had convinced me to put her onto the account because she was managing the business. She had written checks to herself, and that last 20 that I had was gone. And I couldn't do anything because the bank was like, well, she was a co-signer on it. So I was like at the absolute rock bottom, and that's when I think I was in New York, and Sandra calls me. She goes, I've got a big commercial for Target and Tom's that I want you to direct. So there was this recharge. And that's when finally people were coming to me like, dude, just go to Kickstarter. And I'm like, no, because I've been trying to make this movie forever. And my ego, I was embarrassed because I'm part of this dance community that they're part of. And a lot of people know that for years I'd be going to events and saying, I'd get the mic and say, hey, we're going to make this movie and we're casting. And I'd come out, and by the time I'd cried wolf a million times. Yeah, okay, whatever. But going to Kickstarter was probably, and that's getting to one of my, that's probably my major point here. Going to Kickstarter was probably the best thing I could have ever done, because it it just created this whole new source of energy. You're raising money, but you're creating awareness and you're creating a vision. And it just starts to create this train and it started to move. We set a goal for $100,000. I brought on someone who now has a company called Avenida Productions that kind of gave me the structure and the to-dos and not to-dos. Like, don't overextend your campaign, right? Because it's all about creating a sense of urgency and try to find little investments along the way that you can help, create lifts that give some perception. And we were in 45 days, we raised $103,000. Actually, in the last 48 hours, we raised like $20,000 of that 103. And it created this surge where everybody felt like they were part of something. And so we had enough money. I took my savings, friends and family, took $180,000, went to New York and started full-on production. And that's when the whole line producer thing comes in, right? Working all this hard, and you hear the line producer takes a little money that you have. But we got major discounts from Panavision. That's why that, along with our incredible DP, Pedro Avila from Mexico, we had beautiful photography. And then she came in.
We also had a lot of companies to support us and a lot of locations that we got for free, where here in LA that would have never happened. And also, like, permitting in New York, there's no cost, except with like street parking stuff, but in comparison to LA, it's really expensive to film here. So I think that really helped us as well. The fact that you didn't have all these, fees in New York like you do in LA, and a lot of free locations, basically all of them, right? Pretty much, if not like pennies, literally like $100 for them to, clean up the day we shot and things like that. But mainly we got all of our locations for free.
And I'll disclose it now because our distribution deals are in place. Our whole entire budget we're still under $500,000. Music rights, reshoots, post. You saw the quality of the picture. We did some real post. We have a Grammy Award-winning composer. But it shows like when it all comes back to story, right? It was the script and the vision. And it's when people start to own your vision and you're open to collaboration. I started to lead this ship, but it's now like picked up its own wind. And when you can allow your vision and project to become someone else, it kind of carries. But yeah, it's we didn't have all the money at that point, but Lee Daniels did the same thing with Precious. I think he had $800,000, and he's like, "Listen, I'm just going to start shooting," and that's what we did on set. I was raising money in between takes.
Tell them about the lunch.
He really was.
There was, so there was one day where I had like 70 cents in the account.
And he didn't tell me.
And
I'm ordering lunch, and I'm like, the car's not going through. Like, can you call the bank? He didn't tell me.
And then also the Kickstarter, like 8 days in, we finally had the money deposited into the account, and they locked up my account to the point where it wasn't call in, it was you need to come into the bank with 2 forms of ID. We had to break production for like a few hours. I ran to a B of A in the Bronx. They like called, it sounded like they called some special branch off of Mars, where it was like this elite of Bank of America associates. And they're like, there's nothing we can do. You can move the money, but you have to withdraw it in cash. I'm like, I'm in the middle of the Bronx, and you guys want me to take $80,000 and like so I was putting stacks in my pants and slowly going across the street to Chase. And this is like in the middle of production to move that money, and then running to Ubers and getting back to set and having to focus and get back in. But you know what? Up till this morning, I'm gonna just tell you, it is, and this is how many aspiring filmmakers are in here? It does not stop. We're in 602 theaters, and I got a 911 call this morning saying we need $50,000 because a few of the theaters are going to pull because we need to pay those virtual print fees. And there I was again this morning while I'm doing a call to action video, while I'm touching base with everybody, we're focusing on travel, I'm raising $50,000, and we did it. And it's like, you literally have to be prepared. And this is, not just as a director, it's a film, this is as talent, as a producer. If you want to be in this industry, be prepared to run a marathon. But man, you will get to I promise you'll get to the finish line. It's there. You will get there. But I wouldn't
You
trade.
have to know that it's going to take that long, at least 5 years, after, with pre-production, with raising the money. It's going to take a very long time. And, something I want to add to what you were saying about, the production value and stuff like that. my expertise in production is with crew, and I have a huge roster of crew members from TV, union, non-union, digital, film, because all these positions are these roles are different, or even if they're the same role, it's different, to work on a film set than on a TV thing, than on a digital thing, So what I do want to say and recommend to the filmmakers here is to always take care of your crew, because you need to build a rapport with them. So when you are in a situation where you can't pay them the commercial money, then they'll do you a favor, and you'll be able to get a quality DP or a quality gaffer that will do it because they believe in you, because you've treated them well, because you have crafty, because you don't just have cold pizza, you know what I mean? And so that's really important to, build those relationships with your crew and be good to them, be loyal, and don't mistreat people. That's one of the things that I am really adamant about with my sets. I don't like anybody, getting crazy, anyone yelling at anyone, not even the PA. On shoots in the past, I had a PA, crash a truck. I didn't go off because you know what? There's nothing to do about it. It's not going to resolve anything, So that's, my philosophy with crew, and I have a lot of crew that respects me and that's extremely loyal, and that I'm, when I'm in a bind, I'm able to call them and they'll be there and they'll do a great job, because, I treat everybody equally, and I expect that from everybody else, and I set that as a standard so everybody else can treat them the same. So, crew is extremely important to me. It's like one of the number one things for me.
We mentioned a little bit more about the specifics in terms of funding and the aspect of the preparation to production and actually rolling and filming. Kind of just to speak more to the actors, Jorge and Kimberly, what was the process like to prepare for the roles, or even during filming?
I jumped in days before we started. So for me, I remember sitting down, reading the script, laying it all out, scene by scene, and then just coming up, figuring out who this girl was really quickly. Luckily, I lived that life. I danced professionally for many years. But Josie is not exactly me. I got to travel around the world, and I got to do this. I didn't get stuck in the Bronx, you know what I mean? So so I had to find and figure out, how I connect to her and who she represents to me. And I know a lot of girls that didn't. And so, she was softer and kind of a little bit more fierce in a more passive way. Whereas Jadi's personality is a little bit more like my personality. I think I'm a little bit more in your face and a little bit more direct. But so I found what I thought the through lines of the character was. We did a table read, and Tony was like, just go. We gotta go. And full energy, full whatever. And then I just played around with my cast. We rehearsed a lot together. The boys had an apartment in the city, and we would just run scenes, make sure for us it was true to the actual dancing world. Have conversations with Tony. I mean, he was so open to discussion and collaboration. Sometimes I would be like, as dancers, we didn't do that. We didn't care about this. We cared about that. Or we would never say this, we would say that. And he was like, all right, cool, let's work it. So it was a lot of collaboration. It was a lot of rehearsal on our part. And we really embodied these characters. I mean, we kind of lived together and worked together for 30 days nonstop.
So when, obviously, as I mentioned, this was the first time for me. So I didn't even know what reading lines was, or I didn't know what. Hey, I'm gonna audition you, and you're gonna have to go back and forth with someone you've never met. I was cold turkey. He shows up to my hotel room and, hey, here's an actress. Do these lines. So what do you mean, do these lines? But
he was off book, not realizing how cool that was that he was off book
For the whole thing.
So the one thing I said, what do I need to do to prepare for this? Because obviously there's no classes that I can take leading into, because I was just like Kimberly. I only had a week to prepare. I had to cancel a lot of my events to do this. So the one thing he told me is study your lines and know them. And I was like, I can do that because I can memorize things very well. I didn't know what off book meant. I just said, memorize my lines. I was like, I can memorize my lines. So I showed up to the first day of rehearsal and I knew my lines. That helped me and focus and to only focus on doing those lines well. So basically, since I knew what the lines were, I utilized my squad to help me to approach these scenes the right way. I will say, Ralphie, when I read the paper for Ralphie, I relate to Ralphie very, very much so in my real life. My relationship with Gilbert is actually my real relationship with my real brother. That hospital scene, those are real tears. I lived that. That my brother 7 years ago was almost killed in a motorcycle accident. He lost his right leg. I had to relive that, and that was my first day of shooting. So that hospital scene was my first day of shooting. I showed up to the hospital, and he said, "This is what you have to do." But Gilbert was amazing in being able to tap into the story that I provided him about me and my brother's relationship. And so in regards to Ralphie, I've lived a lot of what Ralphie had to do. But realistically, Tony came in very motivating and guided me the right way. But I have to give credit where credit's due. Kimberly Flores was an absolute VIP this whole entire movie. She took on the role when this guy is running across the street from Bank of America to Chase and back and forth. She really took the role to help myself and Gilbert and the rest. Kimberly would come. Me and Gilbert were rooming together during the entire process. That's why me and Gilbert were able to really create a bond and pretty much become brothers off screen, which helped us on screen. But Kimberly really came in and guided myself specifically. She trained me, she trained Gilbert, and I, obviously without my squad, I don't think this would have been possible. So that's kind of where my inspiration came from, as far as how I relate to my character, and then how I prepared for my role, and then how my team was able to take it home for me.
I want to open it up to the audience for questions. If anyone would like to ask a question, yeah, go ahead.
So can you talk about the choreography aspect of it? Because there's so much dance. And if you guys shot in like 30 days, wow.
No. 18.
18 days. So I had a director of choreography, and I had four choreographers. There were different elements. There was no way that I was going to do it with one choreographer because of all the different styles. So we approached it very organized, and me being a dancer helped because I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew exactly who I wanted to work with. I knew exactly what I wanted to showcase and the kind of music. So we approached it, breaking it down into specific days and specific groups. And I think we might have had maybe 3 or 4 days of full rehearsal. And I'll just give you one idea how intense it was. That dance finale that you saw, I think there's 12 pieces of choreography that you saw. There's probably another 3 or 4 that were cut out. And then there's pieces of dialogue. There was dialogue scenes that were cut out. That was all shot in one day. We shot all that in one day. A studio probably would have given us a week to do that. But at the same time, that pressure is what created. I mean, I'd like to think that you all could feel the dancers dancing. I mean, they were really enjoying themselves, and it's something that I wanted to showcase, not just movement. So yeah, that's how we approached it. And again, I didn't want to have actors that could dance. I wanted dancers that could act. And so there was never a question. I mean, they would come in, rehearse a little, and then bang it out. So that was how we approached the choreography.
Any more questions?
I just want to thank you for the diversity that you guys have in this movie, because I was able to see Latinos in all kinds of shades. We're Mexican. We're totally different. And all kinds of shades, shapes, sizes, and the whole story about gentrification, that it's affecting all the Latinos.
Everywhere, yeah.
I understand, like you said in the movie, a change is going to happen. But if we can do something about that change, if we can have the organization or organize ourselves and to make that change not affect us the way it's affecting us right now. Thank you for everything.
Thank you for that.
Go ahead.
Me? About the gentrification, how about gentrification
identifying the people. How about, I thought that was something that if I had written that story, that I would have wanted to include in that the people had some means of having more money, so that along with the neighborhood, whatever was happening, gentrification is good. Things being beautiful and efficient and wonderful is the way it should be. But also it should be that the people have whatever they need and function efficiently in that. And I mean, I certainly don't know how it happens, but you know, in my vision, that's what I think it should be.
We try to, good point, we tried to approach that and address that in the cafe scene with Josie and Ralphie, where she says, you know, I'm not opposed to the change, I'm opposed to them whitewashing it. And there was more dialogue in that scene where it was cut out, but he goes in and he has some valid points. Ralphie has some valid points that, you know, these corporations come in with strategy and planning, and they're really trying to think this through. And there are attempts to, gentrification is a made up word, right? When corporations are trying to come in and develop and enhance and revitalize, there does need to be consideration and legislation or, you know, mandates that also equip those that are living there, that don't allow them to be left behind. And, you know, it's because the reality is it all comes down to economics, the financing, the economics. Just A plus B does not equal C, because your rents, it all comes down to rents. I mean, your business owners and your tenants just can't afford, and they're left behind and they're forced back out. And so I think that everybody wants to increase their, you know, quality of life. And I think it just comes down to balance, equipping those that are, you know, in a lesser position, but also from a cultural perspective too. We want it nice, but we don't want to erase the smell, the look, and the feel of what, you know, has been there so long. And there's a way to do it. I mean, there was a time where I had a Starbucks in it, but when you open that Starbucks, there were pastelillos in those windows next to the Viscotti with salsa playing in the music. There's ways to, like, you know, cross over that. And so I think, and that's what I want this movie to be, is just to start to create, to your point, it's like creating just a starting point for conversation and giving some sort of a real perspective and position on it. Because to your point, we want, you know, we want neighborhoods to be revitalized and changed, but I think there's a way to approach it.
Can I jump into that real quick? Because this is something that's super near and dear to me. Why I loved what Tony did with the ending was we're not going to change what's happening. It's a capitalistic approach to society, right? It's going to continue to happen. But to me, this is a love letter to my people and what they did. And it's documented. You know, people can say, you know, I moved to Spanish Harlem, and this happens all the time. My parents used to live in Spanish Harlem like two generations ago, and I got a job. I now live on Wall Street. work on Wall Street, and I live uptown. I think this is where she used to live, but there's no trace of that. And at least for me, this movie, makes me emotional. This movie will always let people know that we were there, and we did do something, and this is what we did. And even if it's all gone, there'll always be this. And that's why I think film is important, and that's why I think this story is super important.
We have time for one more question.
I don't know if mine's worth it, but this is so much, this story of Boyle Heights right now. So for Los Angeles, it should have a lot of meaning. But my curiosity is about the fact that I loved all of the characters. I truly loved the film. It's a very, very warm film. Besides the music and the excitement, the warmth is beautiful. But why were the two evil people both women?
Anglo women.
Good observation.
Well, no, I think there's interpretation, because the London boss wasn't evil. She was.
Well, well, she wasn't. Let's say she wasn't generous, and she wasn't.
Well, I'd say, and that can be interpretation. So I come from corporate, and I wanted to highlight women in corporate because I mean that's a whole other conversation, right? I don't think, it's definitely the scales are very male centric in corporate America. So that was why I chose 2 female executives. But our London boss, she was just being a boss. It was, but the Alicia was necessary, and I don't think it was cliche or over the top. I mean, it's really like how it is. I mean, it's business, and I wanted to highlight how
Brutal they are.
how selfish, how selfish, how selfish and just thoughtless a lot of corporate developers are to this situation. They don't empathize, and that's why his line is so key. When we were doing that scene, like I was pissed because it was so real and it's true. It's the people that are doing the rezoning and mandating these laws. They seriously do it without living these other people's reality. And I wanted Linda. Someone had to be that. She was our scapegoat for that. And someone had to be that. But I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call it evil. But hey, but you know what? It's what I like though. It's giving you a real opinion on something. And that means we've done our job. It's got you thinking.
Yeah, right.
Can we? He had a question. Can we have one more?
Of course, yeah, please.
I'm Edwin Ortiz. I'm from San Diego. I also went to LACC before I
Oh,
transferred
cool.
here. My question was, how was the experience as how was that workload as a producer and a director? Like you were saying, you mentioned that you would go tank to bank, but besides that, did producing conflict with directing? Did directing conflict with producing? What was that difference like?
It did not from a creative. I'll definitely. I want to produce, and I do produce. But if in this situation, yeah, it was tough because it was only Sandra and I. There wasn't, legitimately, you should have a few producers and your executive producers, and then a separate line producer and a production manager. We were all rolled in one. So yeah, it
But
did.
on set, I was the one doing all the producing, work. I didn't go to him unless it was absolutely necessary for his credit card. But everything else, I wanted him to focus on directing. And I took care of literally all the fires, and then we would connect, at night about what happened or what needed to happen. But, that's pretty much how we did it.
My producing during production was really, it was money, it was relationships, with cast, and it was more like you said, once we got into production, it was, if it wasn't raising money, it was more of just focusing on my talent, music. Locations, we had a location manager, but still it kind of fell on us to really look for locations, and we had a location fall through one day, and I'm in the U-Haul at 6 a.m. with our expired license plate or tickets, whatever. I got pulled over and trying to work out new location. But I don't know that I know any other way, and I like to produce as well because but more from a creative perspective. I was telling Sandra, I just finished Hawaii 5-0 for 3 weeks. And it was nice because I got to see, I told Sandra, I was like, Sandra, we could build a spaceship if we had the proper team and not just her and I, full. So I would like to produce, but in certain elements. But I wouldn't have traded any other way because it was awesome. Sandra and I would be carrying hard drives at 3 a.m. We did everything. It was just the two of us. And this woman's is a beast. So
he needs to write a book on this. I say it all the time. There's so many stories. So much. We each have 10, 15 stories that will blow your mind, on set, and it probably even from this week.
Go ahead.
To the director. After all those failed attempts to get the money and people just kind of backstabbing and stuff, what made you keep going? Like after all of that, losing all that money and all those people.
I saw this movie, like I could see it crystal clear, and it's like I've got to this has to be seen. And what's literally happening tonight and tomorrow night and this weekend, I've seen that, and I didn't know that I was always going to get to that point, but I had always. I mean, Sandra and I talking the last 3 years. We're going to get a theatrical. We got to be in theaters. But when it came time to get distribution, nobody was giving us a shot. It looked like we were going to go straight to just digital.
And you never felt like you shouldn't do it because there was something like downfall?
You know, there's that balance, right, where you're supposed to read, like, when do you know to give up or go a different direction. There were, like, vignettes of that, meaning, no, this movie should get made, but you need to stop talking to this person and now try this direction. Absolutely. That was the Kickstarter. Stop hitting these doors. It really should be this way. So yeah, it's knowing when to make those decisions, but you know, it's when and it also just comes down to just faith. You know, I've seen it this whole time, and I mean, they'll tell you like I've been running a 4-minute mile for 10 years. I didn't go like this for it, and that's why we're here. I mean, we're an independent movie in 602 theaters this weekend. I mean, we're doing the 0.01% because we're going.
I do want to say something. He definitely doesn't give up. I do remember when I was still at my job and I wasn't officially part of the project, even though 2 years prior to shooting, I was sort of involved. I helped him shoot some auditions. Do you remember that, Tony? And so I, no matter what, if I was going to be a part of it or not, I wanted to support him and support the movie. And I was sad because I was like, oh man, I want to be a part of it, you know, but I felt, you know, I couldn't leave my job because of my kids and stuff. And so I remember when I saw his campaign that, you know, he did, you know, on his own, you know, with Kickstarter, you don't get any of the money back. You know, and so I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. What if he doesn't? What if they don't hit that mark? He's not going to get any of it. So I remember I emailed him and I literally asked him, because as a producer, I'm always thinking, you know, security and like, you know, planning based on like a budget. So I emailed him and I said, Tony, like, do you have a plan B? What are you going to do? Because he was already, you know, going to New York, and I'm like, okay, well, what if that doesn't close? You know, so I emailed him and I said, Tony, do you have a plan B? What if you don't raise the money? And he never replied. So that's, you know, that just
There
tells
was
you.
no plan B.
Exactly. So, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Was it a happy balance between you guys, or did you guys butt heads because he was like the vision and you were more the stability?
No, because those, you know, I like I said, I would let him do his own thing. When it comes to creativity, I, you know, allow my directors to just do them. And, you know, if I have an idea or a suggestion, I'll like just whisper in their ears and, you know, and then he can take it or leave it. But, you know, right, Tony, I don't think I'm, you know, a difficult producer in that sense where I like, you know, demand things to be done a certain way. Like I let him do his directing, and then I basically, you know, do my thing, which is, you know, really involved, you know, with just budgeting, cutting checks, vendors. Like there's so much to do that at times we wouldn't even really like connect, you know, and talk, like I said, until the end of the night.
At 11 o'clock.
No, like 1 a.m.
Thank you so much for coming, guys, and thank you for coming as well.